Hey guys, my name is Samaria Granberry. I am a dietitian, a farmer, a trichologist, and I'm owner of Feeding the Root, which is a private practice located in Memphis, Tennessee, where I help women get to the root cause of their health issues using science, the land, and a little bit of culture. So I'd like to welcome you to the first episode in our Rooted Talk series. So this month, this Black History Month, I want to talk about how people of color, specifically those like throughout the African diaspora, can use some of the ancestral practices that our ancestors used to promote our health and wellness, like in our modern day life. Because science shows, and I've seen like in my own practice, how using some of those practices really help, especially like people of color, feel more connected to their wellness journey, and not like they're having to do something new or like adopt something new. And there's something that's, there's something special about, like doing something that like feels like home, that feels comfortable, feels familiar. And so I want to talk about a few ways that we can use some of those wellness practices in our daily lives to promote our health and wellness. So first of all, why do I even think this is important? Well, I think it's important because I think like with the conventional model of Western medicine, it's lacking in some areas. Like I've heard lots of clients come and talk to me and say, that they are searching for answers in like these Western like conventional models. And even though I think they have a time and place, sometimes they leave clients and leave people, especially people of color, searching for answers. And I think that a lot of those answers can be found, in some of our ancestral wellness practices. So yeah, even though it's not like heavily researched and not technically like evidence-based, look, there are just some things that can't always be quantified by science, and it deserves some recognition, like whether it was like the ginger and the peppermint candy and the hot toddy, or it was the fact that, your loving grandmother was like taking the time to like nurture you and care for you that made you feel better. Like whichever one it was, like there's still like healing and like value in those practices. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so the 4 things I want to talk about: nature, community, spirituality, and food. So the first one, nature. So our ancestors, they lived in sync with nature. So that looked like eating what was in season, with sleeping and waking like with the sun and with the moon, being outside, like getting that vitamin D. I know, like if you think about the way that in the U.S., statistics say that people with like darker colored skin are more likely to be vitamin D deficient because of the melanin in our skin. But if you look at the African continent, where a lot of people there have darker skin, vitamin D deficiency isn't extremely high. So the difference is that like our westernized, like it's not necessarily our skin, it's our westernized lifestyles that have us like inside. We're always like, pulling inside the garage, or going to the parking garage, going into work, being in the house, like we're being outside less. And so that vitamin D deficiency we run a high risk of it because of our lifestyles, not necessarily because of our skin. So we can take that note, like getting outside more, eating with the seasons. So, in the winter, what's available in the winter, different squash, potatoes, onions, greens, different leafy greens, what's available in the summertime, different like fruits and like tomatoes and like peas. So like varying your diet with the season, that not only like helps the environment, but also like us as a people, because we can get so used to, because we have access to all the fruits and vegetables, we can get so used to going to the grocery store and getting the same fruits and vegetables every single trip, and then you're lacking all those other things. So like eating with the seasons, eating local, like going to the farmer's market, or even a super easy thing is like when you go to the grocery store, what's the cheapest, honestly, because what's the cheapest is usually like what's in season. That's why when you go to the grocery store in December and the strawberries are like $4 a carton versus when you go in the summer, they're like $1.50. It's because that's what's in season. So trying to eat those things like in season, like our ancestors did to help the environment, but also to, make sure you're getting a good variety of fruits and vegetables throughout the year. All right, so second thing is like your wake and sleep cycle. So, when the sun comes up, like getting outside and seeing the sun. There's studies that show that like that light when you wake up in the morning can help with your circadian rhythm. And then, when the sun goes down, like you're starting to wind down. So not always using so much light at nighttime to, that's like continuing to stimulate your body, because, using light at nighttime when it's dark outside can throw off like your circadian rhythm, mess with like your melatonin release, and make it more difficult for you to sleep. And we know that when we're, sleep is a super important time of our to promote wellness, because that's when our body is restoring itself, and that deep restful sleep is going to be really important. So taking notes from nature and from my ancestors, and like following that like sleep wake cycle with nature. And then lastly, underneath like the nature topic, like using nature to promote healing. So like using the garden, using herbs to promote wellness. So I think that the conventional model is really, obviously we definitely need it. It's really important like in acute settings. But there's different things that you can do like on a daily basis to promote well-being by using like the earth. So like growing herbs, growing different plants to offer nutrition, and different medicinal properties like to your body. Okay, so second thing, community. Like community is so important, and I think it's so overlooked. And that is why like in my practice, I practice integrative, holistic, ancestral wellness, because it's not just about the food that we eat, right? Like sometimes what made the food so good is that because you were in the kitchen cooking, with your family, like you were loving on people, and like that was the feeling that just made the food so good. It wasn't necessarily just about the food. And so I think we can't take food out of its context of community, of spirituality, of love, and just like focus only on the food. So bringing that back into context, especially for us, for people of color, for Black people, I mean, food is community. Food is family. And so thinking about like all of the different ways that like our ancestors lived in community, ate in community. We've really gotten really far away from that in our like Western society, and that everyone's doing their own thing, which great, love it, but also how can we kind of take some of those lessons and incorporate it back into like our day to day. So it's like maybe on Sundays or on Saturdays or on Wednesday nights, or even with your immediate family, like trying to have more family dinners, and then trying to get together more like with your family, like having potlucks, things like that to promote that community aspect of health and wellness. Okay, secondly, spirituality. Our ancestors, like, that is what got them through some of the most torturous years, is like spirituality, like having hope for the future, like believing that this wasn't it, like this wasn't the only thing. And so like trusting and believing and having hope, I think, is a really important part of our health and wellness journeys. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score, and it talks about how like holding negative thoughts can hinder your health and your healing. And I think our ancestors knew that. So even looking at like African spirituality, healers would like intercede on their patient's behalf, like in the spiritual realm. So it wasn't something that was disconnected. They looked at mind, body, and soul. And so that's something that I also like talk with my clients about. So like what's going on like spiritually, like emotionally, like those things cannot be taken out of context and only pay attention to the food. Food is emotional. Look, food is spiritual. Food is all of the things. And so thinking of as you're going on this wellness journey, thinking about like, okay, how can I like also work through like my spiritual self too. There's also thinking about like how our ancestors, like they were hopeful. There wasn't a bunch of like, they weren't always worrying about the future. They like trusted that, the future was in good hands. I think we could take note from that, and because there's so much worry, like we have access to so much information, there's so much worry in our lives, and we know that worry and stress drive up like cortisol, and like extreme cortisol in our bodies make everything else like out of whack. So it's like, your body's always super stressed. It's never like restful. Like you can't like, when your body's in the super stress state, it can't even digest food correctly, much less like sleep well or menstruate well or, all these other things. So like tapping into our spiritual selves and making sure that like that is in order is a really important part of the wellness journey before we even look at like the nutritional part. Because if that's out of whack, then your body isn't even able to do all the other functions like it needs to, because it's so stressed out and is not able to truly, put all the energy towards all the other systems. So that's really important. And I know like for me, like, grannies, great-grand, like God praying, like all that was like central, super important. And I think it has been like in our communities for years and years. And so like practicing some sort of spiritual journey, whether it's like journaling, praying, meditating, walking in nature, like whatever it is, like tapping into that as you're on this journey to like health and wellness. Okay, lastly, is eating some of the foods, I kind of talked about this earlier, like eating some of the foods that our ancestors ate. So, and honestly, like you might feel like a little bit confused, because it's like, it's not necessarily what the American like diet or the American like health system kind of promotes, but like those black eyed peas, look, those collard greens, those like candy, like yams, I don't know about candy, but you know what I mean? Like all of those foods offer really good nutrients. The hot water cornbread, okay? Like all like beans, lima beans, like those were the basis like of their diet. And then, they also didn't eat like meat all the time, because if you think about like the environment, they didn't have like freezers and refrigerators. It was like, again, bringing back to the community piece, bringing back to the spirituality piece, during ceremonies and rituals where they would like kill a hog or whatever, and cook it, and they would all eat on it for that day, and then go back to like their plant-based diet. And so like kind of like modeling our diets after who our DNA is made out of, so like trying to eat more of those like leafy greens and beans and tubers, and, sprinkling our diet with different like meats and things like that can really help promote health. In our world, everyone's heard about the Mediterranean diet, but like, have you heard about the African heritage diet? So it's like, why try to adopt a new way of eating when we can eat the way that we've been eating our ancestors have been eating, that like our body knows and loves, our spirit, our soul, our families know and love. I don't know about y'all, but like my granny, like, well, first of all, when I first saw the word quinoa, I was like, how do you say that? And like my granny still doesn't know how to say it. So it's like, why make someone, or feel like they have to eat a whole nother type of cuisine when they can just eat the foods that like our ancestors have always been eating, live and eat the way that like our community has always been eating to promote their health, instead of trying to adopt another way. Because honestly, I feel like that's just another barrier, to health. And so that's what I teach in my practice, the African heritage diet. That's what I follow, and that's what I teach, like in cooking classes and stuff like that. So yeah, those are the 4 things that I wanted to touch on in this Black History Month, and talk about how we can, take notes from our ancestors and the way they ate, and we can use some of those things to promote wellness. So yeah, so I hope that was interesting. I hope that it was helpful and kind of like sparked some interest. If you want to know more about the African heritage diet, or if you want to know more about like the work that I do, definitely like comment, DM me. You can visit my website at www.beingtheroot.com, and we can talk about how you can start to create your own wellness journey using the help of a dietitian or a farmer like myself, to help you incorporate some of those things into your real life. So I hope you guys have an awesome Black History Month, and I will see y'all next month.